brain sees what it wants to see, and a podcast is like a movie that you see with your ears. This is the Pod People. I'm Matisse Van Rossum, and I'm locked the fuck in for podcasting.
I'm Ben Sheets, and this is Number Wing.
I'm the ghost of Christmas yet to bust. I'm Cleveland Mosier. I'm not that other thing that I said. Another horrible thing.
Well, we're fixing to bust to talk about this movie. Just kidding. I'm not busting about anything. We're back with another Patreon pick episode. This episode was this film was chosen by our honorary pod boy Sam. Shout out Sam. And Sam is taking us over to jolly old England. 2017, a sort of anthology movie. I'll elaborate on that in a minute, but called Ghost Stories, written and directed by
And starring.
Written and directed by Jeremy Dyson and Andy Nyman, and also starring Andy Nyman. And it is an adaptation of a stage play that they created in 2010, 2011, I think. They're, from what I can tell, what I saw first time feature writer directors, but Andy Nyman, who's also the star, is I don't know about like huge, like prominent actor in the UK, but he's been acting since like the late 90s, I think, in a lot of stuff, both voice acting and screen acting. I guess he's in all of those Shaun the Sheep movies. I've never seen one of those, but
He was Tease, didn't you love his performance in Wicked?
was he in that? No, I didn't see
He was
that.
in Wicked, yeah.
Okay.
As Gumbledon or some shit. I don't fucking know, man.
Oh, I saw that he plays Winston Churchill in 3 episodes of Peaky Blinders.
He was in something called like in the 90s or late 80s called like Andy's Gooners or something like that too. I saw that on IMDb. It's very funny.
Andy's Gooners.
It's really some British meaning, and not, the Gooners.
Well, on the subject of gooning.
Oh yeah. Oh.
What a masturbatory film this is.
I mean, anytime you have a writer, director, star, it just kind of reeks of vanity project a little bit, right?
Writer, director, star based on a stage play that he also wrote and directed. It's it's your classic vanity project. Although I will say, better budget, better production value than your typical vanity project, I think. Like, this movie, it definitely feels like a real movie. Not a real good one, but a real movie nonetheless. So I'll give them credit where it's due there.
Yeah.
I didn't discover that it was based on a stage play until after I watched it, and in hindsight, it makes so much sense because, while it is better budgeted than a lot of vanity projects, like you said, it doesn't do the best job taking advantage of the cinematic medium, in my opinion.
No, it doesn't. No, I was thinking the same thing, and like, despite the fact that it covers a pretty wide variety of locations, like more than you might expect for a stage play, it still does feel very stagey. Like, there's never much actually happening other than 2 characters on screen talking to each other, which is not really what I want for an anthology movie about ghost stories.
There is a scene in particular that I thought was fine in the film, but I'm imagining it on stage, and oh my god, awful. We're getting a little ahead, but like the bit where like he's like, "Ooh, reality isn't real. Look at this camper van that we're in. Look at the back wall of it," and then he tears through it.
Oh god, yeah.
If that was just a set on stage, that would just be so annoying. It's kind of neat in the movie, like because they play it up, you know, like they shoot it right, but like in a stage play, you're like, all right, man, like it's just
We will.
yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we rode a bus
yeah,
too early. Let's start at the top.
I want to, we'll talk about the basic premise and elaborate a little bit on when I said that this is sort of like a pseudo anthology, because that is sort of what it's marketed as, like an anthology. The premise basically is Andy Nyman plays a professional supernatural skeptic television personality who goes around exposing fraud, psychics,
Sort of like
magicians.
a James Randi sort of
Right.
character.
And he is approached by this old professor who basically inspired him to do this when he was a child. The guy from the
Debunk
70s.
psychics.
Yeah, do debunked psychics who had sort of vanished off the face of the earth, and this guy is like, I'm my whole like career is a fraud, it's a lie, I believe in ghosts and stuff now. Despite everything, there are these three cases that I could never solve, that I could never debunk, that haunted me. So I'm here, go investigate these and try to prove to me that they're not real. And so the main body of the plot is our professor going to these three different people and having them tell the stories of their experiences with the supernatural. So ostensibly an anthology series, but the wraparound narrative is far more forward and present and developed and fleshed out than your VHS, your creep show, your trick or treat. And I think also, and we can get into this on an individual level, but the stories, the anthology ghost stories are all kind of underdeveloped and kind of truncated in weird ways that it does not feel, it feels wrong calling this an anthology movie to me. Like,
I still feel like it's kind of an anthology movie. You know, it's definitely an ode to kind of the old British anthology movies that like Amicus did, like the old Tales of the Crypt from the 50s.
As well as like little homages to even like the things that paid tribute to that as well. It's like a layer cake. Like there's homages to Creep Show in here. It's clearly like inspired by like yes, like so many of those series.
Well, it's very much a British tradition in a lot of respects. They had a ton of these movies in the past, and you know, Great Britain had a Christmas tradition on BBC of showing, you know, short adaptation of classic literary horror stories. But I mean, you're right that like all of the stories in here feel underbaked. And like the core of a good anthology, especially ones kind of evoking the past with stuff like Tales of the Crypt or, you know, the classic EC Comics traditions. All those stories are moral tales.
Yep.
And like the moral tales of these stories is really not there in these.
Yeah, like
yeah,
it's almost there. Like, but often, like the first one, for instance, the morality is resolved in dialogue off screen.
yes, they always, every single one of these ghost stories or whatever ends before the actual end of the story. That's what I mean when I say that they're truncated. Like, none
Yeah.
of them actually feel like whole stories. Like, they all sort of cut off when it feels like it's just starting to heat up. And, like, I do think that there is sort of a larger morality tale for the entire film.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I also think that that doesn't really reveal itself until the twist in the last 15 or so minutes of the movie. And the actual sort of like morality of that story is overshadowed by how fucking stupid and contrived the twist is. Like, do y'all
Yeah.
agree with that?
a little bit.
I don't know. I found this movie really boring and frustrating, which is not really what I was expecting going in. I feel like with an anthology movie, it's hard to bore me because at least it's always kind of changing itself up. You know, even if you don't necessarily like one story, it never overstays its welcome. You're moving on to something else relatively soon. But I don't think it does a good job of that because the actual ghost stories themselves are so shallow and half-baked.
There were several elements I did initially find compelling that led to my frustration with the lack of resolve. Like I liked some of the like the shitty characters in the film. I always appreciate, especially when they're engaging with Andy Neiman or Professor Goodman, the protagonist. Like I liked some of those interactions where it's like a kind of a more liberal character like thrown off guard by chuds. I thought like some of those like fish out of water moments were kind of cute.
I think the three story mains are good, like Paul
Yeah.
Whitehouse in the first story, and then the teenager. I've seen him in other stuff. I don't know his name.
Yeah.
He was pretty good, and then Martin Freeman, of course, is great.
He's the best thing about the movie, in my opinion. Like he's the most compelling character, and I think he gives the most texture to the scenes. But it makes it even more frustrating again when like so much of their stuff is resolved off screen or waved away by the end. There were some cute set pieces, but let me just read you my first note about this movie. My first note, I wrote ghost stories to title this, and then I just put "fuck you, man."
Where did that come from?
Jump scare at the very beginning. I got real mad. Look, we've said it a million times.
This movie has far too many cheap jump scares.
Far too many cheap jump scares, and like I think some of them are good. Some of them do land. Credit where credit is due. I don't hate jump scares. I like a well enough executed one, but like here it was just like every time the fucking audio went quiet and there was like a very quiet sound in the mix to make you strain your ears before they popped you with something. I fucking rolled my eyes, man. But like, dude, honestly though, like I could tell you that when this movie like came out in theaters, it had to have pissed off like projectionists everywhere. Cause like and Ben, you might relate to this as well to some capacity, but when I was projecting, those first few seconds of audio in a movie are really important for balancing the sound for your audience and making sure that they're good. And like this movie starts with like really quiet shit and then a super loud jump, and like that's the kind of shit that can blow like your theater speakers if you're not careful. I mean, I was a projectionist in a town with a lot they were like very popular for retirement, and so there were a lot of like old people, and during screenings I would get people complaining to us about the volume being too loud, and then before we could adjust the volume people would complain about it being too quiet. So I could just during this movie just endless complaints. The mix was really frustrating to me. I like to just leave my levels where they are, but for this movie, I kind of just kept finding myself tweaking the knob on my speakers during it, because I couldn't hear what the fuck was going on, and then I didn't want to be like fucking blasted out of my own house. So yeah, in terms of like the mix for the jump scares, yeah, I found it generally annoying from the gate, and that didn't help my view of the film.
I didn't have a huge problem with that. Like, obviously, the jump scares are a little too frequent here.
The one at the beginning is the cheapest one by far.
Yeah, and the movie does get a little mumbly at times.
I think this is just a classic case of jump scares trying to fill the void of like any actual sense of dread. Like I don't think that like this movie was atmospherically built all that well. I think it's got a lot of good sets, but I don't think it accomplishes a sense of atmosphere all that well. And I'm having a hard time figuring out why that is, because like I do think like in the first ghost story, like that sort of like abandoned asylum set, like while it's very kind of generic, like it looks good, and I think that stuff is all sequenced pretty well, but I I just wasn't like, it didn't feel tense to me, like I wasn't feeling scared. I think in the second story the movie almost becomes a comedy. Like I was trying to figure out like if it was supposed to be funny, and I think that it has a lot to do with that kid's performance, like how cartoonish that is.
tone is sort of, it takes a middle ground where it really should go one way or the other. And because like those anthology series of the past, like across the board, like were great with tone. Either in terms of being extreme or just like really clean writing. Last week I mentioned like I've been going through a number of those like British like series from the everything from the 40s to the 80s, and some of those are really dry for good, like, and they work quite well like with a quieter tone, and they really do take that time to build dread and to work. And then some are like really goofy and corny and are delightful and fun, and in some cases even a little bit of both, but like that's very difficult to maintain, and this I don't think this movie does. It tries to, but like, and the second sword is a great example of that. You're right.
It's a really good example of what Ben's talking about, that like trying to adapt a stage play and sort of failing to use the full potential of cinema, of like the cinematic medium. Because like, I don't know, maybe this is speaking like too broadly, but I don't think it's really possible to create like a true sense of dread in a stage play. The artifice is just too apparent, and I think that's just sort of like part of the medium. And I don't even say that in like a derogatory sense necessarily, but I can't imagine being like creeped out
Sure.
by,
Well, I mean,
you know what I mean?
from what I understand of the stage play, it's like a combination play and almost sort of magic show, right? Because like there's so many ghost type illusions where they do it on stage,
Okay.
and a lot of that stuff is recreated in the film. And like even so, like that's very gimmicky, right?
Yeah, no, I can kind of see that, because like the tagline of this film, and I played on it a little bit in the intro, is "The brain sees what it wants to see," and that's sort of like,
Oh, I hate that with context.
yeah, exactly. Um, that's sort of like the what our protagonist like keeps going back to. It's like he's unconvinced any of this is supernatural because logical explanations. So and so is like upset about his daughter being in a coma, so his brain, his guilty brain, is creating like the ghost of a little girl who's like missing her father, or all of these things, basically just like trying to justify that like the mind is creating these scenarios that these people are describing as supernatural phenomenon. And then that takes on a completely different context with the twist, and like even saying that kind of spoils it a little bit, but even so I'll hold off. But I can very much, now that you mention it, Ben, like I can very much see how they could use that gimmick in the stage play to be like, oh, look at this, and then we tear it down, and it's like, oh no, it's actually this setting or whatever, and like doing the kind of like sleight of hand magic stuff. And that could be like fun in a theater setting, but like
Good.
cinema is a magic trick. Like,
It's so thick with artifice here, right? Like because it's so stagey in a way on the screen here, it kind of saps it of any tension. Like I'm thinking about like the first sequence with the asylum. It's
yeah,
like yes, the set is cool, but the set is very much dressed to be the spookiest abandoned asylum, to the point
right.
where you're wondering why they need two guards for a rundown asylum like this. And like
Right, that hasn't even been used for like 100 years. Like, why do they have people guarding this place? Like,
yeah.
yeah, that kind of I totally agree with you. I was thinking the same thing when I was watching it, and it's such like an uninteresting kind of setup too. It's like all of these things are right. Like the asylum's like, okay, there's a night security guard who is guarding an abandoned asylum that is run down and hasn't been used for like 100 years, and the lights keep going off, and when he's walking around he shines a flashlight and he sees a little girl and it startles him, and it's like so unoriginal. And it's like, it doesn't always have to be original, but like at least do something interesting with the way that you're presenting it. And I just don't feel like this movie is ever doing that.
Yeah.
It's like it makes the cliches feel so much more egregious, I think, than they would otherwise. Like, show me something fresh. Show me something interesting.
When the first story is ramping up, at the very top, I didn't mind it because it had enough. So I keep going back to the word texture, but it is nice here. Like it had enough like interlayering between the radio he's listening to, the guy coming in over his radio that he's literally speaking with, his show, and the setting itself, and that interplay was all right. But as soon as he leaves that space, or right as soon as he leaves that space, it's fine. That first moment with the one trick that they almost recreate in the stage play, I'm sure, or recreated from the stage play, the where it's the person he sees on the cot, and their head looks all weird, and then he gets closer and it's just a broom perfectly propped up in the shape of a person, which I thought was
Right.
like, I laughed, but I did think it looked scary when it does look like we see a person's face in it. I thought it did look kind of spooky, and then like it's a distinctly weird silhouette. He's almost cocooned. And I thought that was kind of cool. And then like we get to it, and it's literally like this broom is perfectly propped up to look like a person. And I thought that was like pretty hack in a funny way, and I did laugh. I don't know if that's what the tone they were going for, but then from there it just
But Cleve,
plays.
the brain sees what it wants to see.
Yeah. But
Think about it.
then he goes into a room that just has mannequins stacked all over the walls, and it's the same
Dude,
trick, and they keep doing it. And then it's the little scary girl, and it's like we've seen this.
I
Like,
wish I wish y'all had been here and we'd be watching this in the same room, because I have nobody to like verify this, but you just have to take my word for it. During that scene where he goes into the room with all of the mannequins, I was literally out loud calling out beat for beat what was going to happen in that scene. It was so predictable. It's like he walks into the room and he starts panning over the mannequins. I'm like, one of the mannequins is going to be a person. And then boom, it's on a like somebody wearing a sheet, and he starts walking to the sheet. I'm like, he's gonna pull the sheet off and nobody's gonna be there. He pulls the sheet off and nobody's gonna be there. I'm like, now the door is gonna close behind him. Bang, the door closes behind him. He's gonna turn around and his flashlight is gonna start flickering. He turns around, the flashlight starts flickering. One time when the flashlight flickers, it's gonna illuminate a ghost in the room with him. And it's just like, dude, it is like, for a movie that is like purporting to be about like sleight of hand and stuff, there's so little actual sleight of hand. It's
Yeah.
so frustrating.
It's so tired.
Subvert my expectations in literally any way. In literally any way.
the thing is always just the thing in this movie. It's a very literal film for as like surreal as it's trying to be.
Yeah,
Right?
I think one of the only points in that first sequence at the end that I liked is the little girl putting her finger in his mouth.
Yeah.
Because like that's something I wasn't expecting really. Like that's a weird angle to take with it. I will say with the first story too, like we talked a little bit about the texture of it, and I feel like one thing that I noticed with it that is kind of continual throughout the whole movie is like a lot of the texture we get for that story comes by the character telling it to us before the story really starts. Like I thought the conversation, you know, our lead had with the first guy in the like the diner,
The
restaurant,
bar.
whatever, bar, the empty place. um it was interesting, and it was like interesting character texture, but like once the story started, that was gone. Like
Yeah,
we didn't
well,
get that in the
I agree.
story itself.
yeah, I'm sure that's just a symptom of the stage play adaptation, because I'm sure in the stage play that whole story is probably handled in monologue. Like maybe they do like some tableaus, but like I'm sure they don't transition to like an asylum set where they have a guy walking around with a flashlight, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm sure every one of these stories in the stage play is narrated, and that narration in pretty much all of these cases feels superfluous. Like, adapting it into cinematic medium is you can show us these things that are happening. You don't have to simultaneously be showing and telling, which is something that, funny, because we talked about that last week with Angst. But where it works there is because there's kind of an unreliable narrator quality and like a disparity between what the protagonist is narrating versus what we're seeing, but also that they kind of inform each other in an interesting way. And in this
It's full
movie,
response.
yeah, exactly. And in
It's
this movie,
narration over visuals. Like the narration calls, the visuals respond, and like there is interplay, right?
right.
But here it's just it's
It,
call. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the most interesting thing is like they could have easily like put at least some of that voiceover over the visuals of the story itself, but throughout the movie they keep it so separate, one
Yeah.
and the other. And that's why like it feels so superfluous, and like you said, it's kind of redundant at by the end. You're telling us and then you're showing us, and it's frustrating. And like for the second story, to go into that one for example, where he goes to the kid's house and we see the spooky parents in the kitchen just standing there.
Was that
It's
cool?
like it
What do they
it's
do with it?
cool, but yeah, exactly. They don't do anything with it, and again, if it feels like superfluous because they don't do a great job tying everything together, like besides the way that he tells the
The
story.
only thing I found interesting about that whole sequence, and like where it felt almost like kind of spooky, was when like they're going up the stairs and the professor like sees somebody like on the next floor up or whatever, and he like asks the kid, is like, who else is here other than you and your mom? Is like, nobody. Is like, what about upstairs? Like, who's living upstairs? It's like, oh, my brother's room. And it's like, but he doesn't live here, or he's got a wife and a flat or whatever. um and then like somebody like knocks on the door, and the
That was good.
kid's like tells them to go away, and then like after a few minutes is like, I know you're still out there listening. And it's like there's the pause, and then we like hear the footsteps walking away. It's like, I thought that was kind of like
Yeah,
spooky a
he's
little bit.
beset by this demon in his house, and like it's still after him. And I, at this point, I was pretty gripped. I have to admit, like he shows us his room. It's full of pictures of demons from all sorts of, there's Gustav Doré illustrations, there's biblical illustrations, there's redundant, but there's all sorts of different, yeah, like drawings. You got your red dragon, you got all that shit, and that's neat. He's trying to just better understand it, and he says, yeah, I keep them up on my walls so I can see them at all times. Except when I don't want to look at them, I've got this one spot, and there's like this one little spot on the wall where there's like teddy bears, and I thought that was kind of cute, kind of funny, a little silly. Creep show tone, good. Tales from the Crypty. But then we lose that immediately, and we get like a very serious moment with the door rapping, which I thought was cool. Also, but that had me asking questions, right? Like, and so here they're prompting us with texture to begin asking, to inquire, to solve the mystery, right? Why is he beset by a demon or like a dark force in his home that is controlling his parents? Because clearly his parents aren't who they were. What has happened here? Like what is this strange demon that has captured him? We have enough evidence from the eyes of our most reliable protagonist, who is a skeptic, right? If our skeptic protagonist is seeing this stuff, it's law, as far as I'm concerned, especially in this moment with the context that we have. And so I'm really wondering what's going on with this demon. And then he proceeds to tell this story about the demon. If you don't mind, I'm just going to keep going. The morality is he's like racked with guilt and indecision. He failed his driver's license test, but didn't want to tell his family because his helicopter parents and his dad is very controlling and angry. And so he just doesn't tell them, and he just keeps living his life in fear. And he's driving his car, and it begins to shut, and he's on the phone with them, and the phone keeps cutting out. The dad thinks he's hanging up on him, so which just makes him more and more panicked, like a deer in the headlights. And then his car shuts down, and he has to get out of his car and call AAA. Or no, sorry, he hits something on the road.
He hit
And
something,
then his
yeah.
car won't start again. Weird how they deliver it. Like he hits something on the road, it goes up over his car, looks like a goat or deer, And then he looks behind this car, and just in the broad light of his brake lights, we just see it's like a demon in the road, which kind of fun.
It's like a satyr. It's like a goat person.
Yeah. And love that, but very little is done with it past that. If that's our reveal of it just lying down in the road, give us good shit with it, you know? I
Yeah.
feel. Anyway.
Dude, this whole middle story is a disaster in just about every sense. Pacing, tone, like story beats, like just in and of itself, like, dude, it's a fucking mess, dude. Like I was still like sort of on, like, I wasn't blown away by the first story, but I was still like sort of on board until we got to this middle section, and then I'm like, fuck this movie, dude.
See,
So
well,
first steps
it's
are good.
especially disappointing because, like, to me, I know you mentioned earlier that like the actor's performance in the second story is very cartoony, and I agree with you. But the thing is, like, the monologue he has before we jump into the story, I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes,
he's like
the
he has a
problem,
tear falling down his face, and then it feels so dissonant once they get into the story
yeah.
because
Well, because there's no difference. Like when we're seeing him setting it up at the beginning, he's haunted, right? Like something horrible and traumatic has happened to him. He's afraid. He's on the verge of madness. He's obsessed. He's posting these things all over his wall. Like there's something wrong with his parents. There's like he has reason to be like this. But we jump into the story he's telling, and he is behaving exactly the same in the story. Like just from being anxious to tell his parents that he failed his driver's test or whatever, it doesn't make sense. Like I feel like there should have, like, he should have pulled it down a notch for that. Like let him get frantic when the scary stuff starts happening, but show him more like,
Nowhere to go.
yeah, show him exactly, show him more like even keel and like more steady, like when it starts. So there's a place for it to go. It's just like what ends up happening is his entire appearance in the film is completely one note.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, like where we're setting it up, I'm like, okay, like he's
Really
really
good
into it.
here.
This is
And he was
like,
always there, is the answer, which is annoying.
right. And that's
Here's what's even more annoying, right? Is he gets out of his car, he calls AAA, and they're like, we'll be there in 15 minutes or whatever, or 15 to 45
and
minutes.
between
And
10 and 45 minutes.
yeah, which kind of funny. And then it's the usual, once again, it's the usual haunted house shit where he hears the noises of the creature. It seems like it's coming after him. It stalks him for a little bit. He gets back in the car. It enters the back of the car and is like, ooh, yes, hear my story or whatever. And he's like, no, fuck that. And he gets out of the car. And then he runs into the woods and is eaten by a tree demon?
Yeah, and then
Okay.
the story ends, and then
Did I miss something?
there.
Like,
And then stop there.
and then it just stops, and it's like, wait, you were eaten by a tree demon while you were being chased by a satyr, and now your parents are controlled by the demon, and it knocks on your door at night? What? What is happening? And it's like, I was so intrigued. I was so interested. They nailed the setup. I was like, ooh, can't wait to find out what deal he made with this demon and why it continues to haunt him, right?
Yeah.
And like here's the thing too. A little corny with the hearing the growls in the woods and it coming up on him or whatever, but I can put that aside. If it came into the car,
I like it getting into the backseat of his car. I thought
when it
that
put
was
its hands
cool.
around him, I was like, okay, what are we gonna do with this? Let's give the demon some character, and that's the point where it makes a deal to make his parents to make it so he never has to worry about his parents ever again. And he says, okay. And now we understand why his parents are just weirdly like Blair witching in the corner in the house, right? And it works. And he's like, oh, he's haunted. He made the wrong choice with this demon. And it continues to bother him and ruin his life because he wished on a really, on a monkey's paw. Cool. That's fine. But instead, it's like, no, we can't have focus in our story. We need to just do something weird and wacky. So tree demon, because the mind sees what it wants to fucking see, and then the scene, we don't even get to go back to how Andy Neiman like leaves the house. Assumedly, we don't get to see his reaction to that. We don't get to see how he processes the scene.
Yeah, we just cut to him elsewhere.
We cut to him in front of the stump that's just a stump now. It's another sleight of hand where, oh, the tree demon is just this, and the guy swore he saw a tree demon, but really it's just a stump. And like, cool, man. All right. There's no character resolution in that. Like, you set up all that for just like a fucking, is this your card? You know, like it's just a silly magic trick. And
What did you guys think of giving the satyr spooky voice?
I mean, a little bit silly, but again, like, if it had gone where Cleveland was talking about, where it's like he makes a deal with the devil at a crossroads, basically, it's like, that could have been interesting. The creepy voice didn't bother me because it's immediately undercut by, yeah, him running out into the woods and then a tree comes to life and attacks him for some reason. And it's like, to circle back to the first story a little bit, like, Ben, you were talking about, like, the cool thing is like when the ghost sort of attacks a dude or whatever, it's like she hugs him and like her hand like creeps up his arm like to his face, and she puts a finger in his mouth, and then they cut it there, and then the story's over. So it's like right when these stories are getting to what is effectively a climax, they just abruptly end them for seemingly no reason. And they just and it's not even like we get a sort of resolution where we cut back to reality and the character who's telling the story sort of like, you know, talks about the lesson he learned from it or whatever, or sort of like comes to a conclusion about it. It always literally just cuts to our professor guy in a different location, like trying to verify something from the story. Like in the first one, it's like he goes to like the dude's priest or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know, what do you think is your responsibility when somebody comes to you with like this kind of story or whatever?
Can I tell you, that was so jarring from the first story. That scene, right? Like she puts her finger in his mouth, it's sick, and then it cuts to the church. And it cuts to a view from the narthex looking into the church, and we're slowly creeping up on the two figures from the back. And they're speaking to each other. And for a moment, I thought it was the guy. I thought it was like the guy telling the story, who had told the story, talking to the priest seeking guidance. And when the camera pulls around and it's Andy Neiman speaking to the priest, I was confused for a moment because I was like, wait, where's our resolution with this character? Where's our character resolution?
Why is he talking to the priest? Like,
I mean, again, I guess to get more data, but like that doesn't help the narrative. Like,
no. Well, that's another thing, that another problem that I have with this all sort of structurally is like the old man who sort of like calls him at the beginning and like sets this whole thing in motion is like, you know, I was a skeptic and a debunker too, and all of this, and there was these three cases that I was never able to solve. And then it's like we get the cases and the stories, and it's like, what is there to solve? Like, why were these cases unsolvable for you? It was just three people telling a story. Like, there's no real investigative aspect of it. Like they kind of hint at that in the sort of aftermath. Like he goes talks to the priest after the first one, and then after the second one he goes out to the road. But all the investigation he's really doing is like the priest is like, yeah, he saw a spirit. I'm a priest, so I believe in spirits.
yeah.
And then we
And it
move
was
on.
I wrote I wrote on my phone as a response to that, faith reappropriated Christian dogma. Great. Like, yeah, real
Right.
cool. And that's enough.
And
Like,
then in the second one, like, yeah, like you said, he's out on the road and there's like a cut down tree stump. And then he like turns around, and in the back seat of his car, he sees a ghost of himself for a second. And then we just move on. It's like this whole thing is supposed to be about investigation, right? About investigating these cases and trying to debunk them, but being unable to.
it's like, it's so frustrating because like Ben said, the premise is great, right? Like a skeptic trying to disprove ghosts enters the realm of undeniability. Sick. Can't wait to see how he's proven wrong. But instead, the answer is the ultimate cop out. He goes to disprove ghosts and he sees some ghosts. And we leave it at that. Like, there's no journey of the mind. There's no, like, you know, sense of, you know, anything there. It's just there's an addendum to that. And it's, okay, well, he just sees ghosts, but sometimes people need to see ghosts, I guess. You know, like the moral of like the first story, for instance, is he was terrified by these Victorian ghosts, so he developed enough heart to go visit his daughter who's in a coma again. right? He was scared straight. He was scared into going to see that. So whether or not the ghost is real doesn't matter because he's seeing, because good came out of it, right? But the problem is that's in response to him debunking psychics that are hurting people.
Right.
So what are we doing here? Right? Like those are just two different things at that point. Because like I agree, like Neil deGrasse Tyson is annoying. And like 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 debunking stuff can be, but like debunking like mentalists who are taking advantage of people is a good thing. And that's fine. Look, I don't have to have like my morality doesn't have to agree with the movie. Like again, I love the premise. Cool, take that character and put him in a setting where it becomes irrefutable for fun. Dope. But they don't do that either.
I think even his overall motivation is underdeveloped and kind of frustrating as well. Because that's like the first thing we see in the movie, basically, is like his thing is that the reason he feels a responsibility to be a debunker is because his father was like strict, super religious Jewish, and because of his strict religion, he got mad that his daughter was dating an Indian guy, and so threw her out of the house, or she ran away or something. So our protagonist associates his father's religious dogma with tearing their family apart. And so therefore it's his responsibility to keep silly superstitions from ruining anybody else's life.
Right.
Like
the end goal of that, well, it's not an end goal, it's halfway. It's getting halfway there. Like that's our setup, like as you well described. And the payoff is just references and dialogue. Like there's a number of characters, like I said, he our kind of liberally minded character meets a number of chuds on the road on his journey who reference migrants, who reference racism to some capacity, and like it's
the
just
first guy in particular.
And Martin Freeman's character to some capacity as well. Like it kind of comes up a little bit, but like it's not at all in the second story though. Whatever, but
the second story feels so out of place.
It does. It has very little tethering it to the other stories, other than that one site at the top of the stairs before the story even starts. But that's it. It's referenced again, and that's it. Like it doesn't come to a culmination of character. There's no like sense of revelation with Andy Neiman in regards to his relationship with his father that sets up the story. It's the same problem as the second story itself, right? Like it's got a captivating enough setup. It's a good idea, but like ideas are cheap. Like what's our payoff? How do we? What's our revelation? There isn't one. It's just a reference.
There's one scene, I think, between the first and the second stories that's like literally 2 shots where he goes to see his father at the nursing home. And there's no dialogue. They don't speak. It's just, like I said, I think it's like 2 shots. They're just like sitting there.
Yeah, the structure of this film, like with so much narration over, like weird choices of showing and not telling. I do want to say I feel like it is possible I missed something just in dialogue or in passing, and I was just focused on a shot.
Yeah, man.
It was messy, like in telegraphing.
I can agree with that. I really, really struggled to not pick up my phone through a lot of this movie. I think part of that is just like not watching stuff with you guys. Like it's always easier for me to ignore my phone and stuff, like when the 3 of us are like sitting in a room watching shit together. But like, man, being alone and watching this movie, I was like itching to start scrolling, bro.
On that note, I had a very similar moment. You had said that like in your house, like you were like calling those beats. And it was like a shame, like when Atis is smart in the woods. Does anyone hear it? We do. I do hear it. It counts. But I had the same moment, but it wasn't like I don't feel like it was that smart of a thing. I am certainly not bragging when I say this, but like when he first goes to consult with the sage, to meet Obi-Wan and to set him on his journey, in the caravan. When he goes into the old man is in there. I was like, weird choice to cast Martin Freeman as the old guy. That's what I thought. Like I was just like, okay, weird that they're putting Martin Freeman in old man makeup, but it's kind of hokey and funny. So cool. Let's go along with it. Sorry for spoilers. But like, I guess that was a twist.
I thought the old man makeup was pretty good.
It's fun.
I-
It is good, but like it's old man makeup. Like it's good old man makeup, but like
Yeah.
I will say I did not clock that it was Martin Freeman initially. So I mean it's good enough old man makeup that at least worked on me. Like it was obvious that it was old man makeup.
apart from his role as weird CIA agent in a Black Panther, I really like Martin Freeman. Like I like him in his role, so I was like excited knowing
Yeah.
he was in this movie, and I was ready to I was excited to see him, and I was looking for him. And so when the scene came up, I was like, okay, oh, there he is. And then, like, I think I might not have clocked it if I hadn't like known some of the casting for this movie. In fairness, and like, I just like Martin Freeman, and I was excited to see
Well,
him. But
and I
yeah,
mean kudos to him. Like he's pretty good in this movie, all things considered.
it's the Ian McDermott thing. Like, I think he's the actor of the cast who truly understood the assignment. I think him and
Well,
Alex Lothar too, like the young kid in the part too. Like even though like he's not given range, that's the script's problem, not his. And we don't know the direction of it as well. But like I think that like that larger than life cartoon like stuff is really fun and gripping, and
that's a
he brings it.
failure. That's a failure of direction, but also like I don't think it matches the tone of the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Like in that whole sequence, I kept asking myself, I'm like, is this supposed to be a comedy? And it's like at that point, I even did like go grab my phone and like pull up IMDb to like see the genre tags for this movie. I'm like, is it supposed to be is it supposed to be funny? Like, has it up to this point been like your typical sort of dry British comedy where I'm not laughing just because of how dry the humor is? But no, on IMDb, we've got psychological horror, suspense mystery, drama, horror, mystery, no comedy tag. So, like, that whole second bit, it just, and especially, it felt bizarre at the time, but especially in the context of the rest of the film, like, it's totally out of place.
That mystery tag is so funny, man.
Yeah, right. Tell me about it.
Are ghosts real? That's the mystery.
Yeah.
And the answer, if your brain wants them to be, whatever.
Yeah, if your brain constructs it.
Well, let's talk about the third story. You know,
Yeah,
he goes
and
to
move into
visit
the
Martin
twist.
Freeman. Of the three stories, this one I had the hardest time paying attention to. You know, it's definitely not as bad as the second one. Like you were saying, Tease, like that one is a train wreck. But it is just kind of a nothing burger, right?
It's not even half baked, it's like quarter baked. And like after the second one, I had fully checked out at this point. And I agree with you entirely. Like this third story was it's just it's nothing. Martin Freeman is like an investment banker and he and his wife have been trying for a long time to get pregnant and then she does. And then there's a poltergeist in his house and it turns out that it's her because he died at the hospital while he was away doing investment banking or something. So she died giving birth, and her ghost threw some diapers around the room and then appeared and did a scary face at him.
Yeah, a lot of the sequence, it you know, again in hindsight, it feels like this is the clearest example of like the on-stage illusions like being put in the movie, like the things mysteriously stacking all of a sudden, and
Whoa!
the ghost under the sheet coming up in the crib. It's like, yeah, they probably did that in the stage show.
Gimmickry.
Yeah, dude. Well, it's just like I don't why am I supposed to care at this point? Like why do I
Yeah.
give a shit, you know? And it's like I guess this one sort of spends more time cutting back and forth between like the conversation with Martin Freeman and our character cuz like at least like that setting is kind of interesting. They're sort of like out walking on like the moors or something and they come to like this little tiny shack basically like an outhouse, like a shed, basically in the middle of nowhere. Like Martin Freeman unlocks it and he takes out like a double barrel shotgun. It's like, okay, they're hunting while he's doing the interview or whatever. But it's in like after he tells the story, Martin Freeman just like blows his head off with the shotgun.
I thought that was kind of funny. It's really dumb, out of place, doesn't make sense, but at least it like his deliver like his physical delivery on that I thought was quite good.
Yeah,
Like he's just like totally chill and calm, and then just he blows his head off. It's kind of
blows him
funny.
up. I always love that. Oh, and I
Yeah.
guess before that, they are sort of stalked by a ghost in a big parka that
Yeah,
has
spooky parka man.
We see it a few
spooky-
times before as well.
Yeah,
Oh, that's the ghost in the parka is what was on the stretcher in the first story also that ends up being a mop. That's why he looks kind of cocooned and his face is kind of weirdly shaped.
oh, is that what
The
that was?
parka is zipped up around it. Yeah.
I couldn't tell that. That makes sense,
Yeah.
I guess.
I think I'm only just realizing that now, but yeah, it's the
I don't.
same
Yeah,
guy. You know,
I
motifs.
don't think I mean, it
Fine.
makes sense. It considering the twist or whatever, it makes sense that that ghost would be present throughout. But I didn't even notice him until he like they do the jump scare with him on the moor in the third story.
The most painfully obvious one I think is I'm sure if y'all mentioned it, might have the haunted girl in the first story is wearing a very bright yellow dress,
Right.
and then the toy doll in the crib is wearing the bright yellow dress as well.
Right. Yeah.
And then I guess his spooky wife comes out of the shadows and screams at him, and then he reveals in dialogue that at the same time he was experiencing that ghost story, his wife was died in childbirth.
Yeah.
Um,
Because she gave birth to what is sort of alluded to be like an inhuman child.
Specifically, well, not specifically, but he says something along the lines of it ripped her near in half, and it lived for a very long time, like unexpectedly longer than you would think, because life finds a way. And dude, I'm sorry, that's the coolest. What you are describing is way cooler than anything I've seen in this film.
Yeah,
Like,
You're telling us and not showing us. It drives me insane.
and like, look, I get that, like, Palace of the Mind shit. Like, yeah, project a shadow on the wall that's scarier than the thing, but like, you just did a scary thing and it wasn't that scary, and then you could describe this thing that sounds actually spooky. Come on, man! Like, let me see it. Let me see the goods.
Yeah, I'm
Like,
more interested in the monster child.
yeah. We
Well,
don't get it.
I think part of the reason that the third story is so sort of like nothing and abrupt is because it's really leading into the fourth story, our protagonist's story, the twist, the big twist. It's kind of what, like Cleveland you were alluding to, like he goes back to see the old guy in his trailer and he's like, what is so special about these three cases? It's just people seeing things that their minds want them to see. And then the old man's like, oh, speaking of things that the mind wants to see, and he like starts pulling off all the makeup and ta-da, it's Martin Freeman. And it's like, what? We just saw him blow his head off. How is he also this old Scottish man? And then he like reaches back and like pulls down the set, revealing a different set behind it. And it's like, what? What's going on?
Well, it's a Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come moment, right? And it's essentially been
Yeah,
revealed that these three people he sent to him were three ghosts. Tonight you'll be visited by three ghosts. Instead, tonight you're visiting them or whatever. But like, yeah, and each one will tell you some part about your own life that will reflect your own morality in some capacity. And I'm gonna be real again. Conceptually, ideas are cheap, but as an idea, it's good. Like that, your wraparound story, all of the morality tales of your wraparound story affect the morals of your protagonist in the rap. Like, sick. Like, I think that's a great idea. I just wish it'd been well executed.
yeah. Well,
'Cause again, like,
I just wish I'd given a shit by the time we got to this point,
of course,
right? Because
yeah.
like that's a big problem with it too. It's like, yeah, Martin Freeman sort of becomes like the devil character who is like guiding him through this story of his own life and like forces him to relive a trauma from his own childhood in which he sort of witnessed, half took part in an incident where a couple of bullies made like a mentally disabled kid like crawl into like a sewer drain, and he had an asthma attack in there and died. And the protagonist didn't like tell anybody about it.
Well, or go in to pull him out of there because I think he has a
Or
seizure or something. I don't know.
yeah.
Like it's
It,
like he passes out in there, and if someone had gone in to pull him out, assumedly it would have, but he was too scared and
yeah,
ran.
or gone for help or whatever, yeah. So he was too paralyzed by fear and indecision, so he left and the kid died. And then I guess later in his adult life tried to kill himself but failed and ended up in a coma. And so the whole movie has been a coma dream that's been repeating over and over again. And that he's like projecting like the little bits of things that he experiences of the outside world into these characters in his dream. Like Martin Freeman is his doctor, and
It
like
was all a dream.
it's just like, dude, it's
Are you
like
playing?
it's so cliche. It's so on the nose. It's so lazy. It's like I didn't see it coming because it would be too stupid for it to be that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. At the end of the day, this film there's very little I can ascribe to this film as original. It's an homage, it's a love letter, sure, but even with an homage, you need to bring your own voice to the table, right? Like what is
Yeah.
absolutely, Tease. Like what is it contributing to like the history of anthology series, right?
What's it
Like
contributing to the canon? What's it contributing to the canon? Nothing. It's cheap imitation. Like
yeah.
you can call that homage if you want, but if you're not actually doing your own thing with it, it's not really homage. It's just kind of late. It's just kind
I
of
it's
lazy.
and again, it's referential, right? It's it's referential of other haunted asylum, spooky, scary girl stories. It's referential to satyrs and demons in the woods. It's referential to, these things, A Christmas Carol, for instance. But like it, again, apart from like some solid character performances that aren't necessarily well used in the script, like what is it bringing to the table? There are a couple of details that I like. Some. The finger in the guy's mouth is supposed to be a hint that he's in a coma and he has an intubator, right?
Oh
Yeah.
Like
yeah, sure.
like that's kind of neat, but
Sure.
that's all I got. That's all I have to write home about.
I mean the third act twist with the hospital stuff, I feel like I wonder if that plays better on the stage, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like,
Probably.
with each story kind of cutting to black and then, you get your final reveal of him in the hospital. That probably works on stage. It just doesn't translate super well because
Here's
like
the thing.
I do appreciate the swing they're taking, but at the same time, like I'm so checked out at that point that I don't really care that, this is kind of a reality breaking event, right?
Here's the tricky part about it, right? Like we just said, like what does this film bring to like the canon? And it doesn't. But what I will say is a stage play very well does. I've never heard of like these sorts of tales from the crypt style stories told on in that medium.
Sure.
That's fresh. That is a cool idea. I can't speak to how well it's executed. I'm curious, but like now we're just readapting that back into its original medium, and I think a lot's lost in doing that.
Yeah, and I do think that like this is the kind of movie where they sort of feel clever that they're leaving like a number of clues throughout the film to sort of like key you into what's happening. But the
Yeah.
problem is that a lot of those clues don't actually function, just references that you understand after the twist has been revealed. They don't actually like lead you to it. Like the finger, the like the ghost putting the finger in his mouth is like a great example of that. Another one I think of is like the way that they lure the disabled kid to like go into the tunnel or whatever is like the bullies tell him is like, okay, I've chalked 10 numbers, you know, deeper and deeper into the tunnel, and you know, once you find the 10th one, then you know you get to be in our gang. But the joke they're playing on him is there's only 9 numbers, so there is no 10th number, so he has to keep going farther and farther in, and he gets more and more scared, so on and so forth.
Well,
But
each of those numbers appear throughout the story as well,
right.
and
And also did you notice that the bar where he meets the first guy to tell the first story, that bar is called the 10th number.
man, it's like
I'm sure you didn't
numerology
notice it
levels
because
of stupid.
it doesn't mean anything until you have the context for it later. You
Yeah,
know? And it's just like I don't know, it feels like one of those things where they're like
literally
people are
self-referential. Like
it's
it's
like
yeah.
we're making such a twisty and turny story that people are going to want to go back and rewatch it later, and they'll get to find all of these little things and be like, ah, now that I know where this is going, I get it. And it's like I am, especially of late, I'm loath to throw the word pretentious around in terms of movies, because I think it's too often a lazy criticism of movies that you don't want to engage with on their own level. Like it's you hear pretentious leveled at like so many movies that are not pretentious.
Well, it's an anti-intellectual like knee-jerk response to academia,
Right.
right? Like when
Right.
something is like well written or composed, like someone who doesn't want to think about it or stupid says it's pretentious because pretentious means elite, right? And like I find elitism to be annoying too, but like academia isn't necessarily elite, right? Like or like
No, but I
intellectual
mean,
films doesn't mean pretension. Pretense means it's pretending to be smart but doesn't really deliver on anything. And I think this is absolutely that. Like I think you're right.
yes. No,
Like
that's
this
that's
is this
that's
is
my point.
like what
Is
is the pretense
I think
of
this
this
movie
film?
is pretentious.
Yeah.
I think this movie is pretentious. I think it has a very clear pretense of being more clever than it is, especially in the twist. And like I don't know, that's why I made the joke at the beginning about, you know, the goon sesh or whatever, like this being a masturbatory movie. Like it really does feel like these guys are kind of stroking themselves off, you know? They're having a
Yeah.
wink.
Well, and with those third act reveals, like they don't have the weight. You'd hope for something like this to feel like a puzzle box, right?
Right.
Where like by the end, all the pieces come into place and you have that oh shit moment. With this, it's just I would personally just chalk it up to poor storytelling.
Yeah.
Um to the point where none of the pieces have any sort of weight. So like you don't really care when it all comes together. And in that respect, yeah, it is pretentious because again, they think they're better storytellers than they really are. Um
Absolutely.
but I don't think this is a particularly smart movie either.
No.
Um
No.
yeah.
And like I don't think pretension necessarily has to relate to a film being like overly academic. I think that that's how it's thrown around a lot. But the important thing about pretension is that it is providing itself with a heightened level of importance, a self-imposed heightened level of importance, or, you know, mastery or something. And I do think that this film feels like they think they're really clever with how they're setting this up in this reveal. And then when it actually rolls around, it's not that clever, nor is it satisfying, and it just feels like it feels like wankery, you know, by the time we get around to it. Like, why do I give a shit about any of this? I don't even particularly like this protagonist, so why do I feel bad for him at the end to know that he's stuck in sort of this like endless purgatory of reliving this same thing over and over again. Like, why do I care? I don't know. I don't. I just don't.
Well, they end with the Monster Mash, classic.
Yeah, that was weird.
I as a point always try to sit through the credits. I think we all do. Like it's nice to just kind of sit there and think about the movie. And I with the Monster Mash started playing, like, all right, that's it. I'm not sticking around for this. And I just like I scrubbed through it to see if there was like some dumb shit at the end. There wasn't, and I was like, all right, I'm done. And that was it. Like I never do that. I love sitting through credits and just thinking about the movie and taking my time with it. And I just didn't want to stick around anymore for this movie.
Yeah, I also just like why the Monster Mash? Am I stupid? Am I missing something? Why that is
Monsters.
It's that
It's
cliche,
scary.
sort of purposefully dissonant end credit song that's supposed to feel kind of cheeky, but it's so done. And like again, like Monster Mash, like you said, it really doesn't have anything to do with ghosts,
doesn't have
right?
anything to do with those. I just know. Well, it's like that's another reason that the middle story feels out of place. Like you could say, yeah, there are a couple of monsters in this movie. There's a goat man and an evil tree. But it's like the movie's called Ghost Stories. What are they doing there? That ain't a ghost story. It's a goat man story. But then also like why are you doing why do you have the Monster Mash as your credits music for a movie about ghost stories? I I don't know, man. But yeah, that whole thing like coming around at the end, it's like, the brain sees what it wants to see. It means this whole movie is his brain seeing what it wants to see, trying to reckon with the sense of guilt over letting a disabled kid die in a wet tunnel
When you're a kid.
when you're a kid. It's like that in itself is also such a cliche. Like that's like such a Stephen King kind of thing where like the kid does something like something horrible happens as a child and it haunts him as an adult. It's like none of this is original and none of it is offering an original take on anything, an original interpretation, an original approach. It's just a frustrating and unsatisfying amalgamation of references to things within the genre. And I agree with you wholeheartedly, Cleveland. Like, I think this kind of story could absolutely be novel on the stage. Execution is everything. Like, so I can't say one way or another about the actual stage play Ghost Stories, but why adapt this into a movie? It's just not adding anything to the canon, like I said.
Why don't you throw a rating on that?
2 out of 5. I did not enjoy this movie at all. I thought it was boring. I thought it was frustrating. I thought it was pretentious. Yeah, I did not have a good time with this one.
When the two additional notes in my, I'll just lump it into my rating. When the guy in the first story, when the guy's in the Victorian place and the generator goes out and he goes to check on it and check the darkness with his flashlight, I said to myself, Five Nights at Freddy's, yeah. um,
Boy,
I, who's this? What's his name? Fuzzy Bear? I don't know. Anyway,
Freddy Fazbear,
Freddy Fazbear.
he's having a laugh, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's playing he's having a laugh and he's taking the piss.
I did note that when Callahan like appears as a ghoul, I did like his makeup.
The makeup is
Um,
good, yeah.
the makeup is good, and I kind of like the transition, just in terms of execution. Not of not conceptually, but of like Callahan then putting his fingers in his mouth and it becoming, and he lies down next to him and becomes the intubator. Yeah, that's kind of neat. Again, I did, as Martin Short is hamming it up, like that was fun.
Martin
Martin
Freeman.
Freeman.
Keep doing that. Martin Freeman.
What if Martin Short was in this though? That'd be crazy.
That'd be dope, dude. Martin Short rules. Yeah, like again, he understood the assignment. I enjoyed seeing him in the film, and I liked some of the texture of the characters. But overall, again, what is it all? It didn't amount to anything, and so many. Each one of those stories just ended a little short, and I never really got to get that. I never got to bust for all the jokes we've made about that. Like you don't get that big like moral revelation with a character. Like Like, it's just not earned when the fucking the tree creature pops out and eats him. Like, why? What did his anxiety have to do with tree creatures? You know, like it's so stupid. So anyway, yeah, no, I 2.5. Let's say 2.5. That's my rant's done.
Ben?
Yeah, again, like this movie doesn't take advantage of, being a movie at all. It feels like these directors were a little out of their depths. I'm sure the stage play is kind of cool, but this is not the stage play. So yeah, this is a 2 out of 5 for me. I don't really give a shit about it.
How many? Wait, was this Sam's pick?
Yeah.
It was Sam's pick.
Sam. I feel like we keep we've had a number of Sam picks where we've just absolutely ragged on it. For that, I think we've had probably about as many Sam picks where we've like adored it and loved
Yeah,
it in
Sam's given us
fairness.
plenty of good picks.
Yeah, like he absolutely has some like all-time favorites of mine as well. But there are a few. This has happened a couple of times where we've just absolutely ragged on one of Sam's picks. I do feel a little bit, but
I mean,
yeah.
listen, being an honorary pod boy means you get to choose movies for us to talk about, but it doesn't mean that we have to like the movies.
Oh no, absolutely not.
We're always gonna have an honest discussion about it, and it's nothing personal. But
What is
Ghost
though? I'm taking it personal, and Sam, I'm coming for you. We're gonna have a talk. We're gonna have a talk about this Ghost Stories movie. You and me, bud. Yeah, I'm coming. I'm coming for you.
Well, that'll give Ghost Stories a fucking anemic average of 2.2 out of 5. So I can't personally recommend this one. But next week it's my pick, and I'm doing something a little bit different this time. Historically, my picks are things that I've seen before, movies that I really love that I want to have a chance to talk about with you guys. But I'm taking a page out of Cleveland's book, and I'm picking a movie that I have not seen, and I think I'm the only one who has not seen this movie. We're staying in the UK. We're staying with ghosts, and we're even staying with attempted ghost debunkings. I did not plan it this way. I've had this pick laid out for several weeks before I knew we were doing Ghost Story this week. But we're going from ghost stories to Ghost Watch.
The stars could not have better aligned. Like as I was like scrubbing through the credits of this movie, I was just thinking like I cannot wait to go from this to Ghost Watch. Like in terms of writing and quality and the rest, like it's so funny to me that we're covering Ghost Watch after Ghost Stories. Like it's great.
I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
Ghost Watch has been on my list for a long time, and really the only reason I've held off on watching it until now is because I figured it would be pod worthy, and so I've decided to finally just pull the trigger because I need to see it. Because I mean, I love mockumentary, found footage style horror movies, and
There's a
I've
lot to
always
talk about.
yeah, and I Ben and I both kind of did not like Late Night with the Devil, and I always heard that movie compared sort of unfavorably to Ghost Watch. So I'm excited to see some of those ideas handled better. So,
Hell yeah.
yeah. So join back with us next week for our review of Ghost Watch. I'm very excited. Um, until then, if you like the show, do the thing and leave us a 5-star rating, a review, share an episode with somebody, like and subscribe, and all of that stuff. That's the best way to get us into people's recommendations and so on and so forth. But also join the Patreon, patreon.com/podpeoplepod. You can get all kinds of fun rewards over there. You can get into our Discord where you can argue with us about stuff. You can become an honorary pod boy where you get to recommend movies for us to talk about, like we did on this episode. Shout out to our honorary pod boys as always, Sam, Zach, Micah, and Mitchell. Special shout out to Sam this week for picking ghost stories for us to talk about. Sorry we didn't like it better, bud. Maybe next time. Um, And last but not least, of course, you can follow us on Letterboxd, Pod People Podcasts, where you'll find a list of all the films we've talked about on the show with our average ratings and links to those reviews. For my recommendation this week, I'm going to recommend a fun little game that I've been playing lately. I think it came out last year. It's called Tactical Breach Wizards. It's sort of like it's very XCOM style, and it's sort of like a squad based turn-based tactic shooter, but I would actually say that like the actual combat mechanics are probably closer to something like Into the Breach, sort of like battle chess style, where you're really having to be cognizant about like where you're moving enemies. You knock them out of windows, sort of knock them into traps that you have set. You have some like time bending powers, so you can like foresee like a move in the future and rewind and stuff. It's really fun. I've been enjoying it. I'm not super far in, so I don't know where it goes really, but it's been a good little time.
Okay, so for my recommendation, I just learned this week, it was announced that Clarence Fock died. Clarence Fock is one of my favorite Hong Kong directors of all time.
Fuck who?
Well, he has a very singular filmography, and yeah, so I'm gonna recommend going to check out some of his movies. He did the movie Naked Killer, which is one of the most vibrant movies I've ever seen about, women being brought in as hitman in Hong Kong and kicking men in the nuts and, shooting people and killing people in elaborate ways. It's super fun, super vibrant. He did this movie called The Iceman Cometh, which starts out like a Shusha, 16th century fighters, and they get frozen in ice. And
okay, so nothing to do with a stage play of the same name.
No.
The Iceman Cometh. Yeah.
No, it's literal. Like they are in ice and they get brought into the modern day, and it's sort of fish out of water situation. Very vibrant, very fun. And then finally, he did a movie called On the Wrong Track, which is a late Shaw Brothers sort of riff on Rebel Without a Cause, except with a lot more explosions and Hong Kong insanity. It has Andy Lau in one of his first performances. Dude's filmography is full of hidden gems that really need to be discovered. So check some of his movies out.
My rec is at the very top of the episode. Ben mentioned Christmas seasonal BBC series, and as I said, I've been going through a lot of these anthology ones. I'm going to recommend one of those to bring things back around, specifically from the series Inside Number 9. There is an episode called The Devil of Christmas, and so it's specifically Inside Number 9 is a Christmas special of the series is like dark British. It's like dark comedy anthologies, but this one bops. Like, and I don't want to explain why, other than I will say it's about Krampus. And
I love Krampus.
Yeah, so go watch The Devil of Christmas. It's I don't know how long it is, but I want to say it's like 25 minutes. It's not too long, 25 minutes. I'll say it starts with like a director doing commentary over the thing, and that's like part of the medium itself. It's cool. They do some really cool things with that, and I'll leave it there. But yeah, go check it out for sure. It's super fun.
Well, all right. Thank you as always for listening, dear listener, to our ghost stories this week. And be sure to come back next week to watch some ghosts, because a podcast is a movie that you see with your ears.
Theater of the mind.
Yeah, theater of the mind, exactly.
Ask me if I give a fuck about it, yeah. Ask give a fuck about fame. Yeah, recently I just don't give a fuck about a thing. I just decided about it, race said it got beside it. That you so big to me, I dug a hole for you to lie in. I'm sick of this on it, all the moments, energy components. That limit and follow, I know promises, so much they bonus.
Everything rings and I can see my breath, so right now I'm breathing, but I got no pulse. I just wanted to leave, but my heart ain't beating. I'm gonna get back to the black hole sun. If my gun, I don't need a bonus fun. I'm running as up and I'm living, I'm running my home, trying to keep my wrist closed.
I'm on a pass and I know I'm not coming back till I resurrect.